Ryo Saiba has recently become one of my favorite characters of all time. Hard to come across a character that has a suave yet overly assertive nature of Bond, insanely hard-boiled as most of Chow Yun-Fat's roles, but also holds a magnum like Dirty Harry. Hell, City Hunter itself is kind of an answer to all three of these, alongside one of his anime influences, Lupin III. Tsukasa Hojo being acquainted with Tetsuo Hara, who wrote Fist of the North Star, also makes sense since Ryo, despite being a sex fiend, shares similar demeanor as Kenshiro, alongside sharing the same voice actor at the time. That voice actor is none other than Akira Kamiya. He was already a prolific voice actor even before Ryo. I want to go into a deep dive on why I not only love Ryo Saiba, but also go in deep into this character's psyche. I will only go through the anime and manga of City Hunter since both are the most consistent with how they handle Ryo. The anime does add new episodes and scenes while also taking away some, but some of those episodes are some of my favorite parts of City Hunter, mostly because it adds a lot of what the characters are, and I would even argue a little better at times, so much so that Hojo later references them in the back half of the manga. But as for now, I just mostly want to focus on Ryo, and this is my way of celebrating City Hunter's 40th anniversary.
この町には事件が多すぎてね、札から漏れた悪党を掃除するのがスイーパーとしての俺の役目だ。
Ryo Saiba is a sweeper. His clients are people who would write XYZ on the job board and meet with them anywhere they please. Usually these jobs require him to do something dangerous, like taking revenge on someone, being their bodyguard, or even finding a dog. He also has an assistant named Kaori Makumura that also helps him out at jobs in many ways, of course. These clients are usually women that he wants to Mokkori with.
Mokkori.
Now, I'm not gonna ignore the fact that Ryo is a pervert. There are some Mokkori jokes I can get behind, and some are extremely funny, but there are times where I found him to be uncomfortable, or the jokes are of its time, to say the least. However, one thing's for certain that I can appreciate is that the women do not take any of his shit. Plus, Kaori's always there too. While I do not like most perverted characters, there are traits that Ryo possesses that make him the character he is. His skills as a sweeper, for one, sure does help, but his respect for most of his clients' goals and admirations are why his clients trust him so much. Aside from Kaori, which we'll get to later, he puts his clients first, above him. He knows that his clients are usually normal civilians just caught in a bad situation, and Hojo's critique on the police system. So whenever his clients are in danger, he is always there to help them in any way he can. After all, they are paying him to do this kind of job. I mean, why do you think one of the mainstays in the show, Psycho Nogami, always asks him for jobs that she cannot do since she's a cop? She is one of my favorite examples of the show being a repeat customer, cause she never pays him back. It's what makes the formula for a regular City Hunter episode so great and fun to watch. You see varying clients and their first impressions towards Ryo are, but then warm up to him over time through how he goes about supporting and protecting his clients. Now we know his job as a sweeper and what he does as a sweeper. But what about his skills?
では、お次はそれがしが。
Ryo is known to wield a 357 Colt Python Magnum, which all things considered is a pretty heavy gun that is very powerful. But Ryo is so accurate with it that he is able to shoot towards the barrel of his enemy's guns. I think it's pretty insane how often he shoots in such crazy good accuracy with a gun that kicks like hell and lacks any kind of rapid fire against enemies with submachine guns and fully automatic assault rifles. However, I think it works in the context of Ryo being skillful in regards to his surroundings, which also triggers his new type abilities. I did wish the show would allow Ryo to explore different kinds of guns aside from his magnum. For instance, I really did like the shotgun that he uses to kill his main target completely unnoticed in episode 3 of season 1. He occasionally does use a sniper rifle, which explains how he is able to detect and shoot enemies at longer ranges. But even then, it's not as fully realized as I'd want it to be. But it's not all bad though, since you get some of the best scenes with it. However, there is something worth admiring about Ryo using his cult python during situations that wouldn't be ideal otherwise. It makes for some of the most based and even clutch moments of the show for sure. But in a way, the Magnum itself fits into his personality. 6 shots is enough to finish the job, but also cold-blooded like a python. Now, how did he get this good?
彼女の胸はやばいぜ。待て。手ぐらい洗っていけ。
Ryo's backstory covers a good portion of ground to how he is so effective at his job. During City Hunter 2's finale, Bloody Mary talks about Ryo's past to Kaori regarding his survival skills after surviving an airplane accident that left him stranded in Central America. He also has a serious case of aerophobia in the manga. He was trained in a village and learned how to navigate through harsh environments. You can see in certain moments in the anime where he's able to navigate through the forest while also being able to hear certain alarming sounds from great distances. I think the ones that strike me the most are him sensing characters that he respects.
動くんじゃない。
I would also like to talk about his partnership with Kenny Field. Kenny dies in the hands of Ryo, but he leaves him with a dying message of taking care of Sonia. While the backstory itself is brief, it shows that Ryo is able to have precise aim at the heart. It is shown throughout the series how consistent he is on hitting his targets. The 2 duels between Ryo and Umibozu exemplified both of these backstories exceptionally. The first one happened during Miki's debut. It shows both Ryo and Umibozu shooting at each other in the heart with perfect accuracy. Second is their duel in the graveyard, allowing Ryo to get his way around gravestones, bushes, trees, and the silence, which allows him to hear cracked branches, grass movements, and of course gunshots to alert where Umibozu may be. Much later in the manga, Umibozu and Bloody Mary reveal another part of Ryo's backstory. But in the Angel Dust movie, it's these guys that talk about it. In both the manga and in the Angel Dust movie, it was told that Shin Kaibara wanted to use PCP to create an immortal army. The operation was cancelled for obvious reasons, but he pushed it. While both the anime and the manga are consistent in what his operation was, this one small yet crucial detail is where they differ. In the manga, Ryo was the only one who took the PCP, but in the anime, everyone took the PCP and Ryo was the last to survive.
者たちは皆耐えきれずに死んだ。ただ一人を除いては。それが
Now, whether you prefer one interpretation over the other, the fact of the matter is that Ryo took the PCP and murdered everyone in his path. Ryo's backstory reveals a great amount of why he became a sweeper we know today. And while tragic, it explains a lot of his actions towards his clients and most importantly, Kaori. Now we know how he got here. But what does Ryo himself take from all of this?
寂しい人、氷のような寂しい世界、そこで一人で戦ってきたような人、でも温かい人、とても。
So, what's inside the mind of Ryo Saiba anyway?
ありがとう、サイバさん。
Yeah, well, but it's not all that. We can laugh and make fun of him for being a massive pervert, but there is more weight to his actions than meets the eye. One of my favorite episodes of all time is where there is a detective trying to arrest him for being a murderer. Yes, Ryo has killed people in the past. It makes him, by definition, a murderer. However, what makes this episode so great is that it distinguishes him from being a guy who just kills people, but also states that he doesn't work for the police to paint his job as an angel of justice.
俺は貴様の仲間でも正義感ぶった警察の手先でもない。俺が思う通りに動くだけだ。くそー。
He lives the way he wants, but leads into multiple contradictions in his life that have cost him his partners. He's very similar to Ahjong from John Woo's The Killer in this regard. They both want better lives for others. However, their hands are so soaked in blood that this is their way of life. They have to keep on living this way. Otherwise, people will chase after them until they die. And the people that get themselves involved start to suffer along with them. This is also a big reason why Ryo never shares his past with anyone. It really is that personal. When I mentioned his past with Shin and PCP, it would be hard for anyone to ever bring that up. Even though you root for Ryo throughout the show, the episode makes a great point on how Ryo sort of lives his life through contradiction. Now on to a more challenging topic. If you notice throughout all of City Hunter, Ryo has rarely killed a woman. In fact, the only woman that he really killed directly was Angie from Angel Dust. You can argue that he killed the Scorpion sister in the City Hunter 1 finale, but that is more indirect, and she essentially killed herself through all of that. Hojo never really challenged this aspect of Ryo in the manga, but the anime does, and they even go as far as to make it the forefront in the movies. He explicitly says in the end of 3 that he has a policy of not pointing guns at women. However, in that same episode, he ends up agreeing to the duel that Sophie proposed. While many would view this as inconsistent character writing, I see it as the show painting a bigger picture of his mental space. Did he want to kill Sophie? No, but letting her live put Kaori at stake. I think one of my favorite moments that challenges this is in Bay City Wars, where he contemplates on killing Luna to stop a nuke from happening. She even taunts him by telling him that he would never shoot a woman. You can even hear his heartbeat race and the screen go black and white, giving us a sense of tension and anxiety on whether Ryo was gonna kill her or not. But Umizubozu saves the day and Ryo never had to kill Luna, but instead her father. He even admits he doesn't know if he would have killed her or not by the end of the OVA. These are moments that Ryo has gotten close to killing a woman, but in Angel Dust, he actually does it. I never thought that decades later, City Hunter would challenge Ryo to this degree. Ryo thought of everything to save her, but then Shin shoots her with PCP, and Ryo could only save her by killing her. Every time where Ryo had to fight a female character, he will always try to find a way to not kill them. And even when he couldn't, you can see the sincerity of him trying his best to find the best possible outcome to both his clients and the women that try to kill him, because he's so against it. However, I think that's what makes Ryo such an amazing character. Under the ugly faces he makes, there is a surprising amount of depth through his whole character that is spoken through actions more than words.
モテすぎる時には気をつけることだ。
ご忠告感謝感謝。
I can go on and list a whole bunch of characters that have affected Ryo, but I'm going to go after the more impactful characters that affect Ryo as a character. After all, it's still a character analysis. Let's start with Hideyuki Makimura. One of my favorite things about Makimura is that he was once a cop, but he turned into a sweeper much like Ryo and became his partner. The anime and manga differ once again with who killed Makimura. Heck, all these different adaptations have different ways of killing the poor guy. Even if their partnership is only shown in a few episodes and chapters, you can feel the camaraderie they have.
受けてくれるな、リョウ。俺の報酬はすでに受け取ってある。俺の胸に刻まれたお前との日々だ。
Now on to Umibozu. His debut was when they were about to shoot each other with a rocket launcher over some actress, and then later they just had dinner. They bicker like an old married couple for the most part. However, they also have serious tension with each other ever since they fought in the war. At times it's played for laughs, but at other times they value their friendship that could only be shared through combat and past encounters. It's why I find their friendship to be odd yet endearing. It's once again like The Killer almost, where they're two opposites that find themselves in the same situation, but they're the only ones who can understand each other. They are the best though whenever they're in the middle of the war zone and they just bounce off each other like it's nothing. Now on to Seiko Nogami. I already talked about how she calls him up, but the running gag with both Ryo and Kaori is that she never pays them back. However, I really like how they can work together as a team when Seiko calls the shots and Ryo does all the dirty work for her. This could lead to very cool moments with them together too. And the few times you see her show vulnerability, Ryo does actually respect that out of her. Alright, I've saved the best for last.
私は大丈夫。
There is a lot to say about the relationship between Ryo and Kaori. Kaori will smash Ryo with a hammer because he's a pervert and doesn't want to pay rent. But they also have a surprisingly complex dynamic. Most couples would have to communicate through conversations and have serious talks, but they communicate through actions and small gestures that mean the world to them. Multiple times, they do a lot of really silly things. But I think what makes them special is that we see it through the lens of the clients. We see it as odd, but at the same time, they're so in tune with each other. I think it's really funny that the clients are now competing for Ryo's love, even though Ryo is the one hitting on his clients. One of my favorite moments of all time is when Kaori gives Ryo a birthday on March 26, because it has so many layers to it. It starts off as a funny gesture because it reflects on the beginning parts of a normal episode where Kaori would just give Ryo shit for being a pervert towards his clients. Then as soon as Kaori gives him his birthday, it gives Ryo more room for him to warm up to his partner more than he ever would have in the past. This is so important, since this is when Mary was flashback dumping Kaori to make her feel jealous towards Ryo and seem untrustworthy afterwards. But that only made their relationship stronger than ever before. Then Ryo completely spits in the face of Mary by saying this.
俺と香織が初めて出会った日だったっていうこと以外はね。
It shows how much they know each other without knowing each other's past as much, as if it didn't matter. This is also the most we've seen Ryo show affection towards Kaori thus far, at least for manga readers. As for anime fans, we got one of the best scenes of affection for both of them here. It's honestly pretty tragic to think back to it, because it shows Ryo being neglectful towards Kaori throughout that entire two-parter. He realizes the scale of the issue at hand, and only he could save Tokyo and bring Kaori back to her senses. Through all the guilt and neglect he had towards Kaori, he was willing to die at that very moment. There are characters throughout City Hunter that have called him out on his bluff for his feelings for Kaori. However, nothing compares to Yuka Nogami in the manga, where she not only sees through Ryo and his feelings towards Kaori. These points are deep cuts on Ryo as a person. And yes, she is related to both Seiko and Reika. As if we needed another Nogami sister in the plotline. It starts with her when she's on the train with Ryo and calling out on everything in regards to Kaori. She even calls him a coward, and she even got sources to back it up too. The Nogami sisters have always been a vocal point on counting out Ryo on his bullshit, but I think Yuka, being a detective novelist, drives the point so well regarding Ryo that it really just hurts. All things considered though, It's a good look into his psyche on how he really feels about Kaori. You can always see a deep care they have for each other whenever they don't share screen time. For good reason too. Ryo will always save Kaori whenever she's in danger, and always has a scary look to him whenever there is anything in between them. Then when someone intends on doing any harm to Ryo, Kaori will impulsively stand up for him and even throw her life for him. Then when you actually see them be honest with each other together, it's one of City Hunter's biggest payoffs of all time.
分かってる。でも兄貴にこの姿見てもらいたかったなと思って急に。
Now, I do want to leave y'all with a question. Does Ryo know that this is Kaori? There is a lot to Ryo that I have yet to mention, but I think I got a good overall grasp of his character in this video. Ryo Saiba to me is an anomaly and an amalgamation of what I look for in a character. While definitely some unattractive characteristics, there is a surprisingly good amount of complexity and maturity this guy has all around, which makes City Hunter all the more worthwhile.